Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob. I don't know if I'm going by whatever. My name's Jacob. Joined as always by Carver, coming off the exciting, although low scoring but still exciting Champions League win, first leg in the semifinal versus PSG. Carver, how you feeling, man? How's it going?
Very exciting game, even though it was just a 1-0. Like you said, I am doing so much better than I was just a few days ago. After Saturday, I thought this was going to be another really shit episode. I was expecting a reaction from Dortmund going into this game against Paris, but still, either way, I was not feeling great after just the thrashing that we received to Marco Rosa yet again. All that to say, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing good. I all last week I was like traveling, working remote on the road and everything, and which was good to take kind of a mental break, but also just being out of the element of a normal routine. Like I'm kind of glad to get back into things. And then yeah, I watched Leipzig. It was funny with my I was watching Leipzig. I was at my parents' house, so I was watching that match with my parents, which was just I would have rather been alone watching that, I think, than them like asking me all these questions or like saying little comments like, what happened to your team? I'm like, don't I know it's not fun.
I actually had a similar experience. My partner Madeline ran a half marathon this weekend in St. Louis. Just wanted to shout that out. She's crushed it. She did awesome. And her family came in town to surprise her and stuff. So after that fact, the marathon, this was in the morning, so I got to catch the replay in the afternoon. And they were like, "We'll watch the game." And I was like, "It's seriously, don't worry about it. Like you don't have to." But we only have one TV in our apartment, so they watched a good amount of it with me, and I had a similar experience. Yeah, I was like, I this team is not fun to watch. I understand. Or from,
Yeah,
I guess
I
from a
mean,
neutral perspective, we are, right?
yeah, possibly. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's happened so many times. Maybe this year, especially with the back and forth of the slipping even more in the Bundesliga, performing even better in the Champions League. It's like the contrast is so great, amplified even like this year.
Right.
But man, we just get this thrashing at Leipzig, which is so sad because we talked about it. Like we have not been able to perform against Leipzig since Marco Rosa took over. For those reasons, we also need to perform. We need to get a result, and we just kind of got obliterated. And then now you have the high of the PSG win. I hesitate to say we'll talk about we're going to get in that match. Obviously, I hesitate to even say like we got one foot in the final because it is going to be a tough task. But yeah, it is kind of yeah. You're just kind of you look back at Leipzig and not that I want to go back and be sad and everything, but I think it's so important to look at that match. Like we can't just write off Bundesliga. Like it. Yeah, we got to talk about it, even though it might not be fun.
Well, it was a must win for a number of reasons. And we have to give the PSG game some context, too, because I think a lot of what happened over the weekend is very important to discuss, even though the game just did fucking suck. I mean, Terzic was not only outcoached by Rosa for 2 years going now, but this game just really exposed a lot of his shortcomings as a coach. I mean, we saw very little rotation outside of the necessary suspensions from the likes of Matson and Chan. But as a result of that little rotation, players were either gassed, injured, or just were going into the Paris game like with some shit form. I mean, they were pretty down, obviously, given the horrible result, and going into arguably the most important game in just the last 10 years for this club. So, and that was just a name of a few things too. But again, a lot of the shortcomings of Terzic was exposed this game. It was a really shit game overall, despite not a terrible start either.
Yeah, I mean the game started well, and we touched on it last week previewing this episode, like the outs, the suspensions. Matson, as you mentioned, and Chan out due to yellow card accumulation. Sabitzer was out; he just wasn't fully fit. I think he was named to the bench, but obviously have to do some heavy rotation there, which we've talked about all season. We talked about. I mean, this goes back to if you want to hang this on the poor rotation, if you want to hang it on Terzic, like you look at the transfer, all of the transfer drama, right? Like, and how we didn't maybe bring in the people we needed. Like, can you imagine if we didn't have Matson right now? Like, it'd be insane. So we see, so just lineup in general, Kobel in goal. Obviously, then we had Rierson playing the left back position for Matson. We had Schlotterbeck, Hummels, our two center backs, and then Wolf playing right back. We had Brandt Still in the starting position. Then we see Mecha and Oshchan come in for kind of Sabitzer and Chan. With Sancho, Adeyemi, they've been kind of doing their thing lately, in full Krug up top.
Well, Metro really got a big opportunity on Saturday to try to solidify himself into this team, try to make somewhat of a name for himself, and he continues to really just disappoint. I mean, he's transphobic and a shit footballer. You have to pick a struggle at this point. He is both consistently, and he's just such a frustrating player, man. I mean, for someone that spent so much of the summer whenever he was signed saying like, "Oh, I just want the fans to give me a chance and I really want to try to prove myself." And you're just seeing such a lack of effort time in and time out. I get he is like a similar body to Pogba where he's like lengthy, he's very athletic, so when Pogba like runs really hard, it seems like he's almost just like lazily jogging just because of just the way he runs and everything. And Metch is similar, but you still see, I mean, outside of that, he doesn't track a lot of runs and he just looks so clueless at times and he's slow with just turning around to, keep himself involved in the play and he loses the ball a lot too. It's just really disappointing. And yeah, you're seeing why he doesn't get many minutes in this team, even whenever he is fit. And it's crazy given that Terzic was the one that, wanted to bring him in almost exclusively, but it seems like he doesn't even have the confidence in him at times, just given that he continues to put on these types of performances.
Yeah, I know we've talked about him a ton, and he was out for a long time, right? But he's still, like, before that, and now seeing after that, like, he's had his his chances to like prove himself and kind of try to work his way into this team. And this was just another performance. There was a couple games ago where I honestly meant to shout him out because I just noticed some physical play that was good. Like, he was really strong on the ball. But it was one game specifically, and then obviously it didn't stand out enough to where I know for a fact I didn't shout him out on on the podcast, but I meant to. Like, there were moments at least where I saw it wasn't great football, it wasn't great passing, it wasn't like improvements I've been wanting to see elsewhere, but it was like an aspect of his game that I saw. It's like, okay, maybe that's there, like the physical aspect, him being able to like body guys a bit and maintain control of the ball. But then in a game like this, he's like this black hole in midfield where literally like lose the he has a moment to get the ball. Like, I know I mentioned it before where I don't know the game and it doesn't matter specifics, but like he tried to do a dummy in the middle of the park and there's a player right behind him. So the ball goes to to the opposition because you can't do a dummy in the middle of the park. Like, that's just stupid. And then he did something very similar where in this match it was in stoppage time in the first half. I think it led to another goal. I could be wrong on that, but I know they scored shortly after this. I don't know if this led specifically to it, but like he just let the ball roll right past him, kind of similar with the dummy thing, and just straight to a Leipzig player. It's like, dude, you gotta take control. You gotta get a touch. You gotta do something. You can't just like be floating around like so lackadaisical. It seems, and just yeah, it's it's been rough, man.
It
And
has been.
the
He's
bad thing is like we like we had to play him, right? Like, who else
Yeah, right.
is playing in that role with Sabitzer and Chan out? The argument is Marco Royce. That, if we want to get in that argument, but yeah, it's bad, and it's bad because there's so many moments in that situation where like he is. It's not that he's not having an effect on the game; he's having a negative effect
Right.
specifically.
He just looks so limp, and just there's nothing about his game that I've seen, at least this season, that resembles the price tag that he came along with whenever he made this transfer. I know he's obviously not making that, choosing that price tag. The clubs are, but there's just nothing that justifies that price that we ended up actually spending. I mean, and I think the bidding started at what, like 15, 16 million, and then it just kept going up by like three or four a handful of times until it ended up being on like 30 and a half or something like that. Way, way too much for the lack of effort that he brings into the team. But I will say it of course was not exclusive to him this game against Leipzig. I mean, again, we weathered the storm pretty well at the start of the game. I know Rosa likes to play narrow and on the counterattacks, and they are definitely absolutely dangerous team, especially against us, especially even at home. So, it was a good job of us keeping it to 1-0 for, or I should say 0-0 for the first like almost half hour, and then we
Mm-hmm.
get a goal, and then we
Yeah.
were caught sleeping right after that. But besides that, the first half wasn't too terrible. It was just the second half, and again the lack of like adjustments and not getting the right message across from Terzic during the break, and we come out, excuse me, completely flat in that second half against Leipzig. I mean, just giving them acres of space to work with, plenty of time on the ball for them to cut through us with their counters and their narrow vertical play. I know you said that like there could be an argument for Royce, and he did come on at halftime, and I like that substitution. Adeyemi was completely invisible, and we needed some experience in the midfield. He broke their lines with some great passes a few times. He had a good header around the hour mark. They had some good like redirection, despite Royce is not known for his heading whatsoever. And he also set Fulkrug up for a terrific chance, I think like right around the 70th minute, if I'm not wrong too. So Royce, I mean, definitely deserves more minutes, and that should have been a game where arguably he could have started. Just for the rotations reasons I mentioned, and he also brought in a lot for just a half, but it just wasn't enough for us to pick ourselves up, and it was just a completely limp performance all around in that second half. Fucking sucked.
Yeah, and I mean the Royce argument too, like for the start, it's not like there wasn't a spot to put him in. Like if you have Mecha and Ozcan playing, like just let Ozcan be the lone six and Royce be an 8. Like I don't know. It's just it's strange. I think how little we've seen Royce, and it's really frustrating, especially I think for everyone who's in the camp that like extend him. Like in I don't know, and maybe it goes like you've heard a bit of turmoil between him not getting along with Terzic and being against Terzic and all this, and maybe it's just kind of icing him out, which is so unfortunate because I think he's a player still obviously valuable and can give so much to this team. It's just sad to see that kind of be fading if that's the case. But yeah, it's like why not? I feel like I know Ozcan. Not everyone gives Ozcan a lot of praise either, but I think he's significantly better than Mecha if you're putting him in that 6 role.
Right. So we've lost 6 of our last 7 meetings with Leipzig, and if you zoom out even further than that, against the top 4 teams in the Bundesliga, Dortmund just have been complete shit all season. We have had just 5 out of 24 points against the top 4 teams this year, and this kind of performance against Leipzig is not an isolated incident, is what I'm getting to. I mean, we had these limp, nervy, just piss poor performances against so many of these top teams in the league this year, and it's just been really disappointing. Completely different from what you would see against or for the Dortmund Champions League team. I mean, it's like you said, the contrast. It's truly incredible, the difference. But we just simply have not been better than any of the teams above us in the table. It's a really tough pill to swallow, but it just is the truth. You look at the other 3-4 teams in front of us, they've just all been consistently better than us. Stuttgart has been bodying us. Leipzig have been bodying us. Leverkusen, they're definitely been beatable, but we cannot get it done against them. And Bayern is Bayern. So the league has been really concerning. If it weren't for this Champions League run, Terzic could and should have been out the door by now.
Yeah, I mean, I think someone would argue he still should have been out, and maybe he still could have. I mean, hindsight, right? Like it. But what if? I mean, there was a time I think maybe going in the winter break where like, cool, get someone in. Like we were so ready for Terzic to be out at that time, and the winter break seemed like a good time to maybe bring someone in. And at that time, like, there's still so much ahead in the Champions League. It's not like you could have. You didn't foresee a semifinal berth in the Champions League at that point. And even I think even if they would have signed another coach and we would have went to maybe the last 16 and then went out, no one would have even been like, we should have progressed further. You know what I mean? Like we would have just been like, that sucks. We'll be better next year. Like,
right.
Which like you said, also makes the contrast even crazier because it's like how are we still doing this?
And it's not like we've had
been fine if we would have went out a while ago with a different coach.
Yeah. And it's not like we've had an easy run in the Champions League either, right? I mean, PSV, of course, they probably were the quote unquote like worst team at that pool in the first round of the knockout stage. But let's get this clear. We had the group of death and we won the group of death and we still progressed after Atletico as well. So, I mean, we've had a really tough run with our injuries and of course just like the not having the coach to get us through so many other huge games this season. But despite all that, man, we are still here, and it's truly an incredible feeling. And I'm just trying to like bask in a delusion right now as much as I can, because I'm not sure if we can pull it off next week. And if we can, it's going to be a party either way when we get to the final. If, when, whatever.
Did you say bask in the illusion or delusion? Or
Delusion.
Because I feel like there is kind of an illusion going on here. It's like,
yeah,
everything's great.
Yeah, right.
No, let's get into PSG.
It's every week. I swear to God, you and I both. It's every week we're like, we'll have a shit episode, and then we come back and we're like, wow, we're back.
I feel like we're so giggly right now too, and I think that just is part of it, right? We're like, we're delusional. Oh man, my face is. We are
still looking
at the camera
riding the high from PSG. I mean, this is the same day. If we haven't said that already.
I will give a shout out, since I said my face is so red. For the longest time, this has only been in podcast form. So, and I don't think we've said it yet.
No, we just started uploading video.
We've been uploading videos. The last few episodes, we've been uploading the actual video of the podcast to YouTube. So if that's a way that you like to intake your podcast, if you want to see what we look like, you don't have to.
It's also free, right? You don't have to pay for it.
You don't have to pay for podcasts either, but it is free on the YouTube.
I guess, yeah, Spotify
Are you paying
Premium
for
and everything.
podcasts?
So I listen to mine on Spotify, so.
Okay. I guess you do pay for, Apple Podcasts is free. Anyways, yeah, YouTube, you can find us there. You can see what we look like, or not, whatever, however you want to take in your podcast. I listen to everything. Some of my coworkers, I see them like watching they are podcasts essentially, watching broadcast shows or whatever on YouTube. I'm like, I don't understand. I don't want to just stare at two people or more for like an hour. But if that's your thing, we appreciate it. I'm doing a terrible job plugging, which is why we haven't done it in so long. Right. But hey, if YouTube's your thing, you can find us. The link, it should just be the BVB podcast on YouTube. But you can find it in the description of this episode if that is where you're currently listening. While I'm plugging, and before we transition fully, I also want to give a shout out to everyone in our Discord. I haven't shouted out our Discord in a few weeks. So if you don't know what Discord is, if you're not familiar, it's like a glorified group chat. So if you want to get connected with us and other like-minded Dortmund fans who are living in this delusion/illusion and just want some Dortmund fellow fans to talk with throughout the week and during the match, then I encourage you to join our Discord. It's been a lot of fun seeing it grow too, and seeing Carver and I are both from St. Louis, if you don't know, if you're not new here, or if you are new here. But it's cool seeing that it's not just St. Louis people. We have listeners from all across the country. So in the world, all across the world. So there's people from everywhere in there, which is really cool. So you can find the invite link to our Discord in the description of this episode, whether that's YouTube or on your podcast feed app, whatever it is. And with that, I did all the plugs. Oh, you got
also,
more plugs.
We're all over the place, but last thing I want to shout out is...
Carver started something else.
Yeah. Last thing I want to shout out is just the women's team for winning the District Cup for the third time in a row now, which is huge. They won the Kreis Pokal. And I'll give more updates about the women's team in general and their season here soon. I don't have them in front of me, but I did want to just shout that out since that also happened today. Big dubs for Dortmund. Just today.
Yeah. Why do we even talk about Leipzig? Jeez.
So true. Let it all that out.
And we do have, you can find more about the women and kind of the people to follow to cover the Dortmund women's team specifically. We've also got that linked in the description of this episode too. Right. But yeah, let's move on to PSG. I know there was kind of a question of availability going into this match. We didn't hit on it, but we saw Hummels exit the Leipzig match, I think in like the 51st minute, which was so sad to see. But luckily he's a little more, I don't think he could play, but kind of precautionary to take him out. And then he was fully ready for this PSG match. We also had Maatsen come back, obviously, having a full week's of rest with that yellow card, and Chan came back into this game too. Sabitzer was good to go. I realized I'm reading the lineup. I was just thinking off the top of my head who was available.
Right.
I know Malen was in training this week, so he was a possibility, but let me jump right into the actual lineup before I just name everybody. Kobel back in goal, Maatsen, Schlotterbeck, Hummels, and Rierson We had Sabitzer and Chan. I literally said all these people already. Sancho, Brandt, and Adeyemi with Fulkrug up top. So pretty familiar lineup to what we've been seeing. But I would say at this point, healthiest lineup and our strongest starting 11,
Yeah.
arguably.
Yep. I was going to say it's the best starting lineup that I would put out against PSG. Thank God for the return of Chan and Sabitzer and Matson, really. I mean, just not that they're great, Sabitzer and Matson are, of course, but just having the existence of a midfield was huge in this game. At first, the only thing I was thinking about was like, hey, I think Royce could be a good addition to this team for this PSG game. But you saw very quickly early on, arguably the most glaring thing was Adeyemi playing almost as a wingback and putting on one of the best defensive, and he's had a few, but putting on one of the best defensive, really complete shifts in a Dortmund kit since he's been at the club. But definitely, especially from a defensive aspect. I mean, that man tracked back so many times and made so many great stops against whether it was like Hakimi, Zara Emery from PSG, a handful of players. So just really wanted to give the credit where it's due for Adeyemi putting on a hell of a shift here. A lot of the players had fantastic games today. I mean, Hummels, of course, too, had one of his best performances this season yet again. Sancho, I'll go into more detail about him, but he had arguably one of the best performances in a Dortmund kit and period, in both spells, whether it's the loan and just also his few years before in his Dortmund career as well. So overall, just a great performance from the team. I just want to give a few individual shout outs at first.
No, I'm glad you shout out Adeyemi because he was on my notes too. Like he was his speed is not that his speed isn't underrated, but I think that skill set in itself being fast, like that was so valuable in this match, especially against PSG. And yeah, he was incredible. He did his job. He got back. You saw him getting back so many times, cutting
And
off
double up with
Hakimi, and
Matson, which was huge. I think it would
yeah,
have been a bit more detrimental if PSG would have been ISO against Matson or Rierson. Not that they're both bad defenders by any means, but PSG are just that dangerous.
I know he's a player who kind of has a lot of controversy because people just haven't seen him do enough, and I know he's also had a ton of injuries
Which
this
is
year,
fair.
which hasn't helped him get maybe into the form that we expect. But I think if you want to put, I mean, this is our strongest 11 that we can play, right? But if you want to give, I guess, Terzic some tactical applause, it's like Adeyemi in that role and using that specifically. Like you're fast as hell, you're the fastest guy out here. Use it, and that's what I need you to do. And he did it. He did it both ways too. You saw him blow past defenders on counterattacks too. It wasn't just defensive efforts, but to go both ways, it was incredible. And I told you before we were recording, one of my coworkers is a PSG fan, so we were watching the game together today. And after the match, he said something about like, why don't we just play to our strengths? Like we're so fast. I'm like, cool. Adeyemi is maybe the fastest guy on earth, so you can be fast. Adeyemi is also hella fast. So just to kind of counteract PSG and their speed, it
Yeah,
was great.
I do want to give Terzic credit for that, for making that decision for Adeyemi being in that role. I mean, that obviously was a tremendous help. I do want to say also, I think I was a bit confused, or I don't know, I was confused that Mbappe was playing through the central channels. I mean, of course, that I think that favors us. I would honestly prefer him playing central because he has to go through the wall of Hummels and Schlotterbeck rather than if you were to be on the wing and go again ISO against Rierson or Matson. I think he would be a lot more successful out there. And then coming in, he could obviously gas Hummels coming from wide areas as well. So him playing a bit more centrally, I thought we were able to keep him a bit quiet, which was huge. Obviously, Dembele was a handful at times, but we are just overall able to. I mean, PSG had chances. Don't get me wrong, but I think the biggest difference between this performance and against Leipzig is just the defensive effort. I mean, the team as a whole really defended well today. That they were just putting their heart and soul into every challenge, and they were getting themselves in front of every shot too. I mean, PSG had a lot of shots, but a lot of them were blocked, and just all of them came from just pure heart. So I really wanted to give credit to all the players really for just getting themselves into the grit of the game and grinding this out. I mean, it was I cannot understate the importance of it.
Yeah, and I might have you kind of or get your take a little more on on the defensive effort, because again, I'm gonna reference or harp on my PSG coworker who I think PSG fans, they come away from this match like, oh, we didn't play that well. We didn't play our game, specifically is what he said. And he also said we just need to get shots on goal, right? But if you look at the stats, I mean, 1.57 XG to PSG, we were sitting at 1.5. Total shots, 14 to PSG, 13 to us. Big chances, 4 to PSG, 5 for Dortmund. Like, it was pretty even, but I came out of that game thinking we had a lot of chances to get 2 or 3 more goals. Obviously, they had a couple back to back that went off the post, but I think PSG fans specifically look at this and be like, "Whoa, we didn't play that well." But I think a lot of that is credited to Dortmund and our team defense. And um, like I wonder if kind of this mentality, I see it a lot, maybe coming from Hummels being that figure and leading from the back, almost kind of rallying the guys. I mean, like I don't know if this is just me guessing. I don't know if this is what said it all or if Terzic said this at all. I doubt Terzic said this, but kind of rallying behind the fact that yeah, Bundesliga season is kind of shot. Like, and people have always write us off. But this is a chance to just like prove something for ourselves almost. Like, that's just how I'm kind of taking it. When you look at this performance and kind of other Champions League performances specifically.
Yeah, it was the reaction that I was expecting, and I mentioned that already. But the Leipzig game was also just nothing but a must win. We should have also had a reaction to that. But the fact that there was a
Yep.
lack of a reaction against Leipzig, I think that really pissed a lot of the players off to really give it their all against this Paris side, especially too because this could, I mean, a win today, which if anyone didn't know, the win today did guarantee us a slot in the Champions League for next year, as well as because of the draw also against with Bayern and Madrid. So it works by like the Champions League in the new format. 2 leagues in Europe will be rewarded with an extra place through the European performance spots. And if you were to go like on the UEFA Champions League website, it shows by country in the top division how many points all the teams collectively are getting. And Germany just got into that last slot, and I forget who's below us. I think it's like Italy, if I'm not wrong. But either way, it's us and England, so we're going to guarantee having that other spot for Champions League, which is huge, obviously. But just the win today too is great because now we're going to set ourselves up for more success next week. But yeah, this is the reaction that we were wanting. I mean, defensively, for sure, it's arguably one of our best defensive performances we've had this season.
Yeah. And we got to shout out Fulkrug and his goal, for a man who's just been playing at Werder Bremen, playing in 2 Bundesliga and everything. Not like he's obviously played in the Bundesliga last year and I think tied for Golden Boot. Like, and we've seen what he's been able to do this year. But I think to go from that and to get to this Champions League semifinal and get that goal in this moment is so cool for him too. Like, I think he's such a goofy character in this
He really is
BVB
like,
world.
yeah, he's like the caricature of a German person. You know, he is
Yeah.
just German, full 100%. Yeah. What a finish, by the way. I mean, his first touch with his right foot was phenomenal, but just that's the exact kind of action that I would want from a striker from him in a moment like that. You know, get a good first touch, and if you're in, just fucking have a go, rip through it, put your laces fully through the ball, and hit it as hard as you can. Try to keep it low and on target. And I think you're going to have a really good chance of scoring a goal. And if not, it's going to likely bounce off and you could have an opportunity for a rebound. Hopefully, one of the other wingers, whether it's Sancho or Adeyemi, is following, or even Brandt right under him as the 10 this game, could follow up for like some sort of tap in or just keeping that attack alive. But Fulkrug just did everything right there in that attack. And I also wanted to shout out Schlotterbeck for the ball that he had to play him in behind. I mean, the turn also to turn away from pressure. I forget who was pressuring Schlotterbeck at the time. And then just to catch almost their entire back line sleeping and to play Fulkrug again was a world-class pass and just a fantastic finish as well. So happy for the both of them, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the finish is great, and that's what I love too about Fulkrug. Like, if there's people who don't know who he is, like, I think he knows how good he is. But think of a neutral watching this Dortmund game, never heard of Fulkrug. Maybe they look him up and like, where did this guy come from? He's like, he's old. If you look at kind of the quick overview, he's old. He played at Werder Bremen. He's played in the 2 Bundesliga. Like, where the hell did this guy come from?
His career has just been on a slow but consistent trajectory upwards. It's pretty like, you know, heartwarming story to see where he has come from, like you mentioned. Yeah. And
I mean,
he's had a lot of criticism, which is rightfully
yeah.
so over the past few weeks for his performances. But I think he's really done a good job of definitely stepping up in a game like this. I know he had some
Yeah.
other chances that he arguably should have put away as well. But I mean, the fact that he just got us on the board and kept us there is so important.
Yeah, there was the chance. I think it was on the volley. It might have been a little
Mm-hmm.
chip cross from. Was it from
Sancho, yeah,
Sancho?
yeah.
And then I mean, Sancho had the nutmeg through ball to Brandt, who should have put one away. I mean, granted, it was a good defensive slide tackle to get that block in, but man, yeah, we had felt like we had so many good chances, where we could have made it 2 or 3, to really give us that a good cushion, not a cushion, but set us up better to go to Paris. Like my only takeaway, and that I think that is my takeaway from this match specifically. Like, of course, I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm so glad we got the win. It does worry me. It's just one goal, and we hit on last
Right.
week. PSG Barcelona. Granted, Barcelona got a red card in that game, but PSG just went on a tear at home, and they're still a good team. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I'm not like extremely full of confidence. I'm so happy with the win and how we played, and I hope it's going to take another performance like that on the road to get moving on.
Well, thankfully, Frankfurt are 12 points below us in the Bundesliga, so there's no mathematical chance that they can actually catch us to take that 5th spot. So now that we have just solidified the Champions League qualification for next year, this is a great opportunity for us to rotate this weekend, get players who have been deserving of minutes. I'm thinking of Royce right off the top of my head, Mukoko, of course, as well. We don't have Benzabaini here, so it sucks that he's
Who?
not going to be able to. Yeah, who? Haller, I think, was on the bench, so maybe I imagine he wouldn't start, but he obviously would be a good person to get some minutes too if we're going to go deep into this season. Just rotation all around, try some things. We're away at Augsburg, but it is a winnable game, and I think even with the players that we are rotating, they can get the job done as well. But I think it's just going to be a lot of weight off our shoulders, and we could just put full focus on Paris next week. I wanted to go back to Sancho, though. Yeah, I know you mentioned the cross already. He had 88% of his passes completed this game. I think it's 51 out of 58. At least 4 of those came in the first like quarter hour of the game, which I actually thought like at first like, oh, Sancho's not looking too great. There was some great runs made into their attacking third from the likes of like Rierson, Savitzer at times, Brandt, and Sancho was just kind of playing in behind, not into stride. Kind of killed some of our attacks. But once he started cooking, the team knew he started cooking because you could see our style of play tweak a bit to just almost give him the ball like inshallah and be like, just play out of pressure, whenever PSG is starting to press us in our half. And he was able to play out of it and in such a beautiful way, time and time again. He also broke the record for most dribbles in a UEFA Champions League game in recent seasons. He had obviously a chance created, 99 touches. He also won the most amount of ground duels in the game as well. So he was just a monster this game, and putting in, just from some of the stats that I mentioned, it's not just from the attacking perspective either. I mean, it was another complete performance from a Dortmund player this game. And if there were any other players that were in denial about Sancho that were United fans, if they watch this game, now they got to start be going like, shit. All right, the kid can ball, which he always could. He always could. I didn't watch him at United a bunch, but I was never doubting that he had talent. And I can't believe that people, even before United, that didn't think he did or have the talent. And then after his stint there, you're seeing him just can easily pick it right back up whenever he's back at home.
Yeah, and not to go back to the Leipzig game too much, but like he had a decent the goal,
Yeah, the
in
goal,
the Leipzig game. Like we started well in Leipzig. We had a few chances, but the goal was just kind of a moment of brilliance from him. It was a poor clearance header from Leipzig, and the ball kind of fell to his feet, but to get I think quick touch and then just buried it in the corner,
Mm-hmm.
kind of off of nothing. Like, yeah. And
Bit out
then
of character for him too. He usually doesn't have those kind of shots.
But yeah, another great performance, and it's good to see him. I mean, you got to remember when we all. I think there's the rumors of getting him back, right? There's the debate of whether it's worth it. There's also the talk of, well, if he comes back, it's fine if he doesn't even play. Like, let this be a rehab place for him almost. You know what I mean? Like, get back into fitness, get back into shape, get back into just the groove of training with the team and playing. Like, expectations were pretty low. And then I think I said, but like I said, those were kind of my expectations. Like, he's probably not even going to play at all. I also was very adamant about, like, it's never the same bringing a player back. And I'm happy to eat my words. Like, I'm happy that he was so ready to play immediately. To where I think he subbed on in the first match. He didn't start for a few games, I believe, but then we get in this stretch where he's starting, and we're almost like I mean, we were definitely a little critical. It's like, oh, well, maybe you rest him or bench him because he's not performing that well. It's like, yeah, he might have hit this pocket of not performing that well, but we also had no expectations. We didn't even know if there was going to be a spot for him to play behind Mullen and Adeyemi and JBG, right? Like, it seemed like rotation at best to go from, oh, well, he's not playing good enough. So it's like, well, why are we even mad? And now he's kind of hitting the stride when we need him most. And it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of his best displays in a Dortmund kit just today against Paris. I mean, he was everywhere. So huge shout out to him too. But again, the collective performance was phenomenal. I mean, again, the reaction that we were really wanting to see, and I was expecting to see against this Paris side. I think we even our build up looked pretty decent too. And I know PSG for the most part, surprisingly, they kind of let us play out at times. At least it seemed a little too easy to play out of it. And it was whether it was like, Schlotterbeck puts it on the ground for a goal kick and gives it to Kobel, and then it's between Kobel, Hummels, and Schlotterbeck for a few passes until they can maybe find Rierson or Matson, and if not, hoof it to Fulkrug. I mean, we were able to find Rierson time and time again, relatively easy, and then he had so much space and to dribble into. So I imagine Paris, if I were Luis Enrique, I'd be doing some adjustments there because we've seen so many times this season against teams that are on completely different levels of quality compared to Paris. If they just simply press us, we're dead in the water. We cannot advance out of our own third, let alone our own half. So I mean, if and we've seen it against Atletico, we've seen it again against bottom table Bundesliga sides. So if Paris can adjust that, we need to have an answer for a counter answer. But for the time being, we did very, very well in our build-up play as well.
Yeah, there were a couple moments that were definitely scary. I
For
remember
sure.
one
Yeah, they were.
specifically where I think Rierson or Chan came back, got it from Rierson, and then Chan tried to pass it back to Kobel, went out for a corner kick, which was just like not what you want to see at all, right?
And
Like,
Kobel
that
had
could have
another
gone.
big turn too. I forget what
Yeah.
game it was, like two games ago. Whenever he had a big turn again, I think it was at home. I'm blanking on who it was now, but it's the same thing here, right? Where it's like, God, Kobel really testing his luck, man. And that blunder in Munich last year was not enough for him. He
Yeah.
still got all this confidence. Woo!
But
I
I
was
do want to shout
shitting
out
myself.
Rierson too on the note of playing out. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
part of it might be Paris maybe focusing a little more on Matson. They know Matson's the guy who can kind of play and will jump into midfield. So maybe they're just like, yeah, let's let this guy, this fullback, have it. But Rierson showed he just not. I mean, he pulled off a couple little skill things, and I was like, what are
Yeah,
you doing, man? But it's like, and I think this goes back to his style is just this like gritty, like, I'm just gonna do whatever the f I want and just run through and just see what happens. And sometimes he scores out of it. And no, it was nice. I love Rierson. So to see him, obviously, I think they gave him some space, but to just take advantage and to become that threat, which they weren't expecting, was awesome too.
yeah, he was a total warrior, and for being the warrior that he is too. And I've said this a few times. It's really underrated how like elusive he is on the ball. I think he's got some terrific turns at times, like simply just dropping the shoulder and then doing like a quick 180 to find other space. He did that a handful of times this game. And outside of that, he had 8 passes into the final third. He had 6 recoveries, it looks like, an interception too. So I mean, again, we can keep going down the list. Everyone had a great performance, but definitely another great shout out to Rierson, man. He continues to be one of the best purchases Dortmund have had. in a very, very long time. I know, rightfully so, the criticism for Dortmund's transfer policy and just their market, I guess, for the past few years has been like just kind of average Bundesliga players. But man, we really found a diamond in the rough for Rierson. He is going to be, if he wants to be, he can be a legend at this club. I know it's early on, but man, he's really solidifying that role of, people are making already comparisons from Piszczek to Grosskreutz that you can keep going.
No, I love him. I think he early on, and I think it is that kind of gritty style. Like I just warrior is a good way to put it too. Like I love him. Um, yeah. Anyone else you want to shout out any other specifics? I feel like I had one and then I lost it. I don't remember what I was gonna say. I was gonna point to. So we've been really critical of subs and the use of subs, and this was a game where it's like, okay, you got it, cool. I won't say you got it fully right, but at least we waited, right? We didn't make our first sub till the 83rd minute. Adeyemi came out for Royce. I mean, I think the argument there is like maybe you could bring Royce on a little quicker, but like if it is for Adeyemi was putting in a shift,
Yeah,
and that's what it. He looked gassed, but
Yeah, he
it
did.
felt like we let everyone put in their shift as long as they could. But 83rd minute being the first sub, it's like cool because we've seen too many times where it's like it seems like we're making subs too early or just the complete wrong sub. The amount of times I've seen Mecha come on for Brandt in like the 60 to 70th minute range, I'm like, when we're losing, or I'm like, what? Why?
Right.
Why? What is happening? And that didn't happen until the 87th minute this time, so I was okay with it.
Right. I was at the Amsterdam Tavern here, the big soccer bar in St. Louis, and we had a pretty good showing of the Dortmund fans. So shout out to Borussia STL. And they were wondering, like, when are we going to make some changes in the second half as Paris continued to apply the pressure? And I don't disagree with them. Like, I think there was kind of a change up needed, but at the same time, it's like I don't know exactly who you take off. I mean, of course, Adeyemi was looking gassed probably after like the 70th, 75th minute. So it could have been earlier, like you said. Other than that, it's like you look at our bench and it's like, well, who do we bring in?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to bring in Mecha at the moment. I no disrespect to any of the players either. Like Mukoko can have his moments too, and I think he obviously can apply pressure just like Royce can, and Wolf is as a fast player too. But in a time like that where you just need nothing but like the best quality that you have, and we did turn to the bench, of course, eventually, like you said. I was also shitting myself whenever Wolf came on. I was expecting poor giveaway or just him getting absolutely lit up on the wing and just being exposed on the wide areas in our third. But yeah, everyone did their job. I mean, they just did just enough. Other thing I might have done differently is just brought on maybe JBG for Adeyemi like 5 minutes earlier, just to keep that pace up. Of course,
Yeah.
we continuously dangerously on the counterattack, and I would argue JBG is just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, on a counter. I mean, that the different qualities, but I think JBG deserved a shout here.
Yeah, that was my only thought, I guess, for Adeyemi. It's maybe you bring on JBG, but I mean, the argument is does Royce cover that too? I think you have to shift how you're playing a little bit because I don't see JBG coming on and playing that exact role that
No,
Adeyemi was playing
no.
and getting back.
Yeah, you'd have to tweak the system a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously Royce coming in, it's the same. You're tweaking it either way. So I think JBG is a shout. But if it's like if Adeyemi can still go a little bit longer, then yeah, maybe hold out a bit. Yeah, man, I like it.
I
I
know.
was so upset when we started this episode, and then I cried, and then I was laughing, and then now I'm here.
Yeah, what a game! Another historical and magical night at the Westfalenstadion. I mean, we haven't given a shout out to the supporters yet either. I mean, they continue to be that 12th man. I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but man, it rings true more than almost any club in the world, really, when it comes to Borussia Dortmund supporters, especially at home. And of course, they're going to bring a great voice going into Paris next week, but just consistently picking the players up and giving them the energy they need to cross the finish line, especially again in a game like this where the players are showing a lot of heart. I think that the energy feeds off each other between the players and supporters, and I think you really saw a lot of that tonight too. So just a great win. I'm super excited to go into next week and potentially do the unthinkable here And I feel pretty good too. Again, with all the weight coming off our shoulders of qualifying for Champions League, we can be. Of course, I'm not saying take the foot off the gas against Augsburg. I'm not saying that by any means. But the rotation, I think, is going to be crucial because I do not want another instance of Hummels being taken off early, players being gassed, or just at the end of the game looking, like shit. I want us to go in fully healthy. Obviously, I want us to be clear of the mind and just really, really not sitting back either. I don't want us to go and play for a 1-0 or even like maybe scoring one. I want to try to actually go for it. And I think that's where we look at our best. It's the same way with here. We didn't, defend a lot. Of course, PSG had a good amount of possession in this game, but Dortmund did not look like a defensive side. And I do not think we should switch back into that mentality going into Paris. And we really need to try to go for it here.
Yeah, and I know we've talked a lot about the mentality, like are we better when we're down, when we have the mentality of we have to come back. And I would hope, like I feel like this as a fan, so I'm hoping the players are kind of feeling like this too. Yes, we have a 1-0 lead, right? But we're going away to Paris. We saw what they did against Barcelona. Like we know what they can do. Like they got Mbappe. What they can do on the offensive. So almost go into that game still feeling like there's still so much to prove and not just let's hold out and hope. Because if we go in with that strategy of to hold, like hunker down and hold out, like it's not going to go well at all. And Paris knows how to break down teams like that. So I hope we just bring that same fight. Augsburg this weekend though, just quick mention on that. Saturday we are back at home. Saturday 9:30 Eastern kickoff time. Augsburg been having a pretty decent season. They've been able to turn things around quite a bit. They're in 8th on 39 points. They are. I'm not saying they don't have, like they still have something to play for a bit, or a little better, like in our 5th position as you mentioned. But we want to get a result too. But I think they're going to be fighting. But I think quality wise, like we should still be able to handle them, even if we play with a rotated squad. I know you mentioned Mokoko. If Haller's not fully fit, it's like let Mokoko get a start. Maybe get JBG back in there.
Definitely.
Royce. But even like we should have the quality, and we're at home, and we just can't have a poor performance against Leipzig. Like we still need to get the results in the Bundesliga. So I mean, my predictions on this is 3-1. I feel like that's kind of my standard all year, but I'm sticking with 3-1. It should be a pretty decent performance. I wouldn't be surprised if we let a goal slip in, but we should still be able to dominate and get a 3-1 win.
Yeah, I feel good too. I mean, I don't know if you mentioned Sula, but of course he absolutely deserves a start at the weekend too. There's a handful of other players I'm looking at that could get some minutes. I'm not looking at Mecha, no thank you, but Royce for sure. You mentioned JBG already as well. I don't know if Duranville is going to be in the squad. I mean, apparently another injury with him, so who knows?
Crazy.
But
Crazy.
I think we win as well. Yeah.
So Augsburg this weekend. PSG is next Tuesday. When we touched on that, you got anything else? Any other shout outs or anything?
I do want to correct myself from last week when I was talking a little bit about Lars Ricken and his new role. I mentioned that he was going to succeed Watzke as CEO, when in fact it's a little bit more nuanced than that. He's going to become CEO or head of sport, which is a distinctly different title from CEO as the club of Borussia Dortmund. Our friend Brian Straub has a great piece that goes into a lot more detail, talking about the intertwines of just like the relationships between a lot of the new leaders at the club, top down. So please just, if you want to check that out, that's on his pages. We follow him on Twitter, and I think I reposted it as well, so you could check there. But I just wanted to give myself a little correction there. I think there's probably a few other things I messed up as well, but I'll try to remember and maybe touch on them next time when I have a bit more information.
Before everyone starts hate tweeting,
right?
Carver, it was Carver, it wasn't me. I usually say the dumb stuff.
I want to be checked. I want to be checked. If I'm saying some shit, that's. I mean, to be fair though, you listener, you know what you're signed up for, right? We're Americans.
Yeah. How many? Did we get any angry messages? No, I'm curious. Like any of our German listeners, are like, God, these guys are
probably
idiots.
I know I've definitely had a few before about our pronunciation.
Hey, that's fine.
That is fine.
Yeah, no. Make sure you check out. Yeah, Brian. It's the same Brian that we've had on multiple episodes with us. We should get him back on here soon. But yeah, definitely check out that article because I think maybe it's because you said it. I was just like, oh, cool. He's taking over it. And then I think I listened to Gegenpressen did it was almost like a preview or one of their, if you subscribe to their, like you get a lot more episodes, but they had a little short, I think it was part of their short episodes that touched on that a little bit. And I was like, that's not exactly what Carver said. And I was like, and then I forgot about it.
Yeah, definitely take their word.
Yeah, check out
my
that
fault
article.
for the lack of research there.
I mean, there's a little, it's always hard to just find information on Twitter or wherever. And that's why we wanted to start a podcast anyway, so we could falsify all the information and then feed it to you. No, I mean, because it's not always easy to get information, especially in English. Yeah, so we might not have all the correct information, but we just like covering and talking about Dortmund. I don't know. Maybe that I just
no more self-reporting. We keep
everything
telling
I just said backfired on what I wanted to say. Go listen to the smart people. Thanks for listening to us. No, listen to us. Read the smart people.
Right.
We will link that. And like you said, it's on our Twitter. And what I was going to say is there is confusion because I think this role was announced. I feel like there was outlets or something specifically talking about it alluded to him replacing Vatska when I think it was more adopting or taking on some of Vatska's roles because Vatska is still going to be CEO and through 2025, right? So he's stepping in, taking some of the responsibility, but not all of it, which is why there is, I think, confusion around that and why you should read the information.
Right.
But it is confusing. He was at the match. It did show him and Sommer and Vatska all sitting together. It was funny because like usually you see Sommer and Vatska sitting right next to each other, and Sommer's always leaned over saying something to Vatska, and this time it was Ricken who was getting the earful this time. And Vatska's just like chilling. Anyways, yeah. Oh, good hangs. Appreciate everyone hanging out and listening. I mean, Carver, unless you have anything else, I think we'll be back next week after PSG.
Yeah, enjoy the weekend. Give us a rating.
See ya. Bye. Let the sirens play you out. Everything's fine.
I know. It's the perks of living next to a highway.